movie Back to the Drive-In. Wait, sorry. I got to start this over. Here we go. The movie Back to the Drive-In is a celebration of the drive-in movie theater, the drive-in movie experience, and the passionate owners of drive-ins across the United States. April Wright, the documentary filmmaker who did, she's done a series of amazing documentaries. One about movie palaces you have to see that is fantastic. During the pandemic, drive-ins made a return. We couldn't go to the movie theater. We had to social distance in our cars as we watched movies. And drive-ins, there was a resurgence of drive-ins during the pandemic. April Wright took it as an opportunity to travel all across the countries to drive-ins all over the place, interviewed the owners. I personally, I love this documentary, but also I love the drive-in experience. I'm just going to say right here on my shelf, I stole this. Oops. I stole this drive-in speaker. Okay. And I had this chromed. It's from the Oak DriveIn in Royal Oak, Michigan. It is the old school drive-in speaker. It's made of metal, kind of a tinny sound. It had a cable that came out the back that you would attach to your car. There'd always inadvertently be someone who would like forget. They would drive away and leave it on their car. It would mess it up. There'd always be someone whose car, like they left their car on and they didn't charge their battery at intermission. I stole this after the Oak Drive-In closed. I ripped it off. I have had it since I was a teenager. I painted it chrome, although it's not looking as good these days. April Wright is here to talk about her doc. I'm very excited to talk to her. April Wright, also, by the way, a nominee and a winner. You won this.
Yes,
that's right. I think there's a future nomination coming for you as well. Could be for Back to the Drive-In. It fulfills all of the. There's only 2 requirements: being reviewed on Film Threat and being available in commercial release. But April, it's so good to have you on the show.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Now, the Oak Drive-In, we did a watch party a while ago for my first drive-in documentary, Going Attractions, the definitive story of the American drive-in movie. And I found some old footage of the Oak in its heyday. And it's in that film. So I don't know if you remember that, but
wow.
that screen and the big OAK with like the light around those letters, it probably looked more run down in the time when you were going there versus when it first opened. But that is a favorite of mine. So I can't believe that you have a speaker from there. That's really cool.
Right here. No, I walked by the Oak Drive-In home from school every day.
Was it closed or it was still going?
No, it was still going. In fact, weird story. I snuck in, the typical thing, sneaking in the drive-in.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine had like a beat up Impala, which is a big honking gas guzzler from the early 70s. This big Impala that was just, we used to call them a rust bucket.
Oh, I know Impalas. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it was so rusted. I snuck in the trunk. My friends put me in the trunk and they didn't want to open the trunk because it would be really obvious that some kid is emerging from the trunk. I slid through the rear quarter panel because it was so rusted out, and I just slid right through, and then I was able to just hang with my friends. I didn't have to pay to go into the drive-in. We saved a little money, but yeah, I the whole drive-in experience. I have memories of my parents when I was a kid took me to the Oak Drive-In when I was little. And this was when you would go to the drive-in, they would put you in your pajamas because they knew you're going to fall asleep. They did a marathon, all of the Planet of the Apes movies.
Oh, I'm so jealous. That would be awesome.
That was great. But April, I'm a fan of yours. You won for your Stunt Women documentary. I think it was nominated in several categories, actually, for Award This, which is happening June 10th. Tickets are going to be on sale in, I want to say, May. So we've moved the event to later in the year. But tell us about Back to the Drive-In. I kind of gave a little taste of like how the project came about, and we have a bunch of questions for you in the chat. But tell us how the evolution of this project.
Okay, so I did make my first ever documentary, which we were just talking about, was about drive-ins, and then I wanted to do a follow-up. And it's kind of funny because right before lockdown, so in February of 2020, I went to the drive-in owners convention down in Florida. So a lot of the owners are part of this association, and I told them I wanted to do a follow-up. And some of them were like, "Well, why do you want to do this topic again?" And I was like on stage with a mic, and I'm like, "Because there are drones." And they didn't know if I was serious or not, but I was kind of serious because when I made the first documentary, I even shot most of that one in standard def because I was shooting it in kind of like the mid 2000s. Some of the interviews were in high def, but I couldn't get into some of the properties because they were overgrown and I didn't want to trespass or whatever. And so I really was thinking, boy, if I had drones, imagine the shots I could get of these drive-ins. So that was one of the incentives. And you'll see in the new one, Back to the Drive-In, there's a lot of drone cinematography, and I got a drone and I learned how to pilot the drone, so I'm pretty good at it now. But also, I just wanted to show the owners, like you said, they're mostly all family owned. Even if they have more than one location, they're family businesses. And I just wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit and show some of the people and how hard they work and how determined they are to keep their drive-ins going, to keep them around for future generations. And I'd gotten to know some of the owners after making the first film. And then COVID hit a month later. And it was, obviously the drive-ins got a lot of attention during that time. I was a little nervous about getting on the road then because everything was up in the air. Like I didn't know if I would get places and they would be closed, or, all those rules were changing really rapidly about what could be open and what couldn't. So I actually went out in the summer of 2021 and I did drive the whole country. So I'm from Chicago, but I live in LA. So I went LA to Texas, up to Nebraska, through the Midwest, up to Niagara Falls area, Buffalo, Cape Cod, Baltimore, and drove back. And I visited 11 drive-ins, 8 different states, because I wanted to just show every type of drive-in, big ones, 7 screens, single screens, old ones that had, been around for decades. I went to one that was brand new that had only been open a few weeks when I got there. I went to like the one in Fort Worth is in a city. You can see the huge buildings. I went to some that are very rural. You can see from the drone shot there's nothing around them. Different types of food, some that show new movies, retro movies. So every difference I could find, I just picked a bunch of different drive-ins, including for people in LA, the Mission Tiki here, which finally closed for good just a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, I know. I'm so bummed out about that. And
your
the
film is how
Vineland,
I found out that the Mission Tiki was closing.
it's such a bummer. Is the Vineland's still open, right? Or no?
No,
That one's gone too.
that is up in the air. The same people that own the Vineland own the Cinerama Dome.
Yeah.
And they also own the Warner Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard, which has been closed for decades. So I don't know. The flea market was continuing to run the movies for a little while, but then they were having trouble getting movies. So they stopped. So there's no movies on screen at the Vineland either. The only, authentic old drive-in, well, authentic, is the Paramount Drive-In, which is at like the 707 710 and the 105.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and it was a swap meet for like ever, and then the same family opened an indoor on the same property, and then maybe like 7 years they put their screens back up and reopened it as a drive-in, and that one's still open. And then the Rhodium in Torrance also shows movies, but not every day. They show them like in the weekends when it gets a little warmer, and that's like the only places putting things on screen, except for some of the more rooftop drive-ins and stuff like that.
I mean, I first of all, I love the whole ritual of going to the drive-in. It's like the best way to describe it. It's tailgating with movies, and also a movie that would be considered a bad film is actually good at a drive-in.
It'd be a great film at a drive-in. Yeah. Oh yeah. You see a
drive-in.
horror movie and like right near you are woods or trees. Who knows what could be lurking. The weather can be part of the experience to make things more scary. If it's a scary movie, you can talk to the people you're with and not bother anybody else. So yeah, it's a more fun, well, it's just a different experience. I mean, I love going to movies anywhere, but yeah, the drive-in experience is really unique and just beyond the movie. It goes beyond the movie. It's a whole experience.
For sure. I even go so far as to like I would have this is my drive-in my perfect drive-in setup is you park two cars next to each other, an empty space in the center. You close your windows on this side, open all the windows on the side facing the empty spot, and you set up lawn chairs,
Mm-hmm.
sit outside watching the movie, and it creates almost like a surround sound speaker
Yeah.
because you've got sound coming from both cars
Yeah.
bombarding you in the center. Then you stick your cooler out there and you have your beverage of choice. I just love the way that you document it because April, please take this the right way. You are a movie nerd. You are a legit movie nerd. Especially I know this from the Movie Palace documentary, which we talked about. I love that film as well. Leonard Maltin's in that.
Yeah.
But now back to the drive-in. It's available now on video on demand. Is that
It's
right?
available Tuesday. Comes out
Tuesday.
March 14th on VOD. So anywhere you can rent or buy a new movie, you can find it on Tuesday. It was in theaters like last summer and fall. I played at a lot of drive-ins and a lot of indoor theaters. And so now it's finally going out more wide on the video on demand.
It's really interesting because we've seen, I mean, as an indie filmmaker, cataclysmic change in the industry and the business is a given. It just is. If you're an indie filmmaker, you're always struggling for one reason or another. And a lot of cataclysmic change is ongoing. You know, how TV changed. Drive-ins at their height were what? There were almost 6,000 drive-in movie theaters in the US. Now it's down to like
Yeah,
what?
over 5,000, maybe
Yeah.
not quite 6,000, but yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and now it's down to like maybe 300-400, if that, or
It was like 305 going into the pandemic. Now it's below 300.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's actually fallen off since the pandemic, surprisingly, even though they got a lot of attention.
this is why, I mean, movie palaces are also a thing of the past. It's more used for shows or Broadway plays and whatnot. So when people say, movie theaters will never go away, it's not true. They could be much reduced in size. I mean, you're an LA resident. You know the Cinerama Dome, the ArcLights theater chain. I was very loyal to that
Yeah.
chain, and them going away was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was,
and they played a lot of indie product too,
yeah,
which is tough. Yeah, the industry's definitely in transition. Where all the pieces are going to land, I don't know.
yeah,
There's a little optimism that the studios for a while kind of, I think, wanted to test the model of what if we don't go to theaters, what if we just stream, and the pandemic gave them a chance to do that. And I don't think it was a great experiment for most of them. I don't think the numbers turned out very well. They realized that movies do a lot better all the way down the line if they have that theatrical piece. So I think we're going to see a lot more in theaters this year and definitely the year after. You just now people have to come back to theaters.
yeah. Well, we'll see. We have a lot of questions for you in the chat. Let's go to these questions and comments. The Nerd Far Away says, I miss drive-in theaters. The last movie I saw in my hometown drive-in was Twister.
Well, that's
Jamie,
a great one because the theater in Twister gets destroyed by a twister.
I think probably the best movie to watch at a drive-in. I'm sure you've seen it, Targets.
Oh yeah.
Targets by Peter Bogdanovich. Look up
There's
the
a
movie.
sniper at the drive-in.
Is a sniper at the drive-in. Oh
Mhm.
man, it's what a great movie. It had that sort of self-reflexive thing, and
Yeah.
yeah. Jamie G. Voltaic Blood, who's a member, thank you. Chris is a drive-in thief. My apologies. Solomon Thornton says, I saw Star Wars A New Hope at the drive-in theater with my mom and dad when I was 7 years old. It inspired me to get into filmmaking. Looking forward to seeing this doc. It's get it. It's on pre-order. You can see it next week.
Yeah.
Dylan W is a member. Question for April. What was the budget? And as a fellow Wright, did kids ever call you April wrong in school?
Yes, I've had many variations on my name, but I often get more names on April than Wright for some
Oh,
reason.
there you go.
But like April, May, June, and all sorts of things that people think they just thought of for the first time.
Right.
But the budget, well, I mean, this is definitely indie film budget because I made almost the entire thing myself. It was something I could make during the pandemic without really a big crew. So when I went out to Mission Tiki here in LA, I did have a couple people come with me, but when I did that road trip, it was only me. So I had my main Canon camera, I had my drone, I had a GoPro that I used for time lapse to show the drive-in empty to full, day to night. And then I knew between those three, I had plenty to cut. And then when I got back from the trip, I was also the editor. So I cut this whole film. So, I'm just paying myself is the budget for the whole thing, the gas to take the trip and the hotel rooms and all of that. But then, of course, post, I used the same composer that I had for the Movie Palace documentary, did the music, did the score for this, and he's fantastic. The same audio guy, the same post house. So you kind of get people that you've been working with. So the budget was just, what can I make? That was the other thing too. Like during the pandemic, I was just like, I can't come out of the other side of the pandemic without a new film. Because like you were saying for award this, it was actually Stunt Women and Movie Palaces that got nominations. Stunt Women I did win, which thank you. That was such a fun night. We did it at a drive-in on the at Frida. The awards show was a drive-in awards show, which was the best thing for me. But those two had come out kind of coming into and during COVID. And it was like, I had a lot of great momentum with those films. I was winning awards, obviously. But I was just like, okay, well, now things are changing. I got to make something new. I can't come out the other side of the pandemic without a new film. And this was one I knew I could get on the road and make. So, it's very much me in this film. My hands are all over it.
Cara, who's a member, asked, question for April. How many drive-ins did you visit during the filming?
There's 11 drive-ins in 8 different states that are primary in the film. And then there's a few others I visited that I kind of hit in the end credits, or I have a couple images from in the film that weren't really the featured ones, but they were just some extra ones I happened to visit along the way. So in the whole trip cross country, also I just stop and visit drive-ins when I'm in the areas. I probably went to 25 or 30 drive-ins just driving cross country, but there's 11 in the film.
Cool. Some comments here. Lubitsch Touch Me says, I wish they still had the speakers. Nearly every night, a car at our drive-in needs a jump. I bought a boombox so I don't have to worry about it. Oh, that's cool. The dog catcher says 1964 Impala, land yachter's dream. John Long last name says, I traveled from Louisiana to the Mahoning drive-in theater on a mountaintop in Layton, Pennsylvania for an event. I highly recommend getting involved in drive-ins. And
that's
April,
one drive-in that I really want to visit one day.
Yeah. Zavin asks, April, are there any current movie genres that would work especially well at a drive-in theater?
Well, they all say their bread and butter right now is family films, that families are drawn to the drive-in. So a lot of things that the studios make, the Pixar movies and the Marvel movies and those types of things, do really well at drive-ins. But during the pandemic, when those weren't coming out theatrically, horror had a really big resurgence. There were some of the next tier studios like A24 and I forget some of them, IFC Films and things like that put a lot of horror and genre into drive-ins, and they actually did really well. So now there's kind of a renewed drive-in horror thing. And then they play a lot of retro movies as well, like Grease always does well. Anytime a drive-in plays it, Back to the Future, there's just a lot of things that people never got to see on the big screen, and they get a chance to go do it, and it's a movie they know. So all those things do really well. The things that don't do well at a drive-in would be like some things I heard you talking about, women talking. I don't think anybody could handle that at a drive-in. Anything that you got to pay too much attention to, you got to have something a little lighter that you only have to pay attention to at the drive-in.
Lubitsch Touch Me asks, what is your favorite drive-in location? Can you even answer that? It would be tough.
I can't. No, they're all my favorites for different reasons.
The dog catcher says 99W Drive-In is still going strong in Newburgh, Oregon since 1953. Francis family owned and operated.
Yeah, it's a great one. I've been there, and I just saw Brian Francis at the drive-in conference this February, a month or so ago. And when I went to the drive-in convention this year, really cool thing, they actually, even though I'm not a drive-in owner, they made me an honorary member.
Oh,
for
wow.
for all the work I've done and all the drive-in visiting I've done. So that was a huge honor for me.
So this is a good question from Chief Brody. Asks April, what on earth do I have to do to see Jaws at the drive-in? I'll say this: I saw it at the Mission Tiki on 4th of July weekend. It was awesome. It was packed, the Mission Tiki, and that was during the pandemic. I don't know. Jaws is probably the perfect drive-in movie.
It's great. A lot of them play it. They played at the Wellfleet in Cape Cod
Yeah,
because it's sort of the environment where the movie happens. But yeah, just keep an eye out because a lot of them will play Jaws. I actually, my first drive-in movie, there was another drive-in near the 99W in Portland area. It's closed now, it's demolished now. But my first drive-in documentary played as a double feature with Jaws. So I got to be a double feature with Jaws. Me and Spielberg, kept
that's
kept the
cool.
night going at that drive-in. So that was one of my coolest experiences. That was really fun. But yeah, it's an awesome drive-in movie.
Jason Webster comments, says drive-ins were great for many reasons. One, you could watch films on a screen bigger than a cinema from the comfort of your car seat. Two, bring your food and see movies under the stars. Pirate Queen says, April, did you visit the drive-in Springfield, Illinois, near the water park?
I have been to that one. I didn't visit it on this trip. The one that's in the film that's not far from there is the Harvest Moon, which is in Gibson City, Illinois, not far from there. But I have been to that one before.
Dylan W's, who's a member, says, out here in Texas, there's a drive-in theater where the seats are in a pool. The first film they showed was Jaws and had guys swimming in the water, tugging on people's feet. I love that. But if
Yeah,
you want
I saw photos of that. I don't know if I would want to do that, but I
to,
saw photos.
a lot of people in the chat are asking like what drive-ins are covered. Well, you got to see the movie and
Yeah.
you'll find out. So buy or rent the film. It comes out next Tuesday. Um, and Dream Profit for $4.99 says, great pull. I love Targets. Can't wait to check out the documentary. I love drive-ins. Take my money. What's one of your favorite drive-in memories, April?
People always ask me this. I went with my mom took us as a kid all the time. There were 3 drive-ins still open. This is north of Chicago where I grew up. It was just such a common thing I did all the time that I don't really have like a specific memory about it. And then I went in high school. I can tell you a funny story from high school. One of my teachers from high school, my government teacher, was also the projectionist at the drive-in. So my boyfriend and I would go like every weekend in the summer, and at the gate, we would just use his first name and just say, "Oh, Lou said we could get in." And they would just let us in. And so we got in all the time. We'd go visit him in the booth. Finally, we started feeling badly. And we admitted to him that we had been using his name to get in because he's like, "Wow, you guys are here every week." And we're like, "Yeah." And so we're like, "Yeah, we've been using your name to get in." And he goes, "Oh, I wondered what all those deductions were in my paycheck." But
Oh, no.
he was joking. He really didn't get any
Oh, my God.
deductions. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I used to get in free, which helped.
Well, thank you, Dream Profit, for that. I'll say one of my favorite memories is seeing movies that are not really that are hard to find. One of the movies I remember seeing at a drive-in because my dad loves science fiction. I saw a movie called Empire of the Ants. Remember that movie? It's a cheesy movie, bad special effects, and another movie called The Chosen Survivors. And those
Hmm.
both of those movies are really hard to find. So it's like these vague, and I'll talk to a lot of people that are like, do you remember this movie? And they have to describe the plot because it's not actually commercially available.
Yeah. Well,
Kind of funny.
drive-ins thrived. There was a big era before you had cable TV, before you had this straight
Mhm.
to video idea. Those movies would go to drive-ins because drive-ins had a hard time getting regular product because there were prints, right?
Right.
And especially when multiplexes started happening, you had to have all these prints for all these screens, and drive-ins were sort of the bottom of the barrel to get those. So they were places that played a lot of product. Like there's a lot of people say like Bonnie and Clyde would have never gotten on the radar. It played at drive-ins where the
Oh,
younger
wow.
audience was going, and that made that film take off. So there's a role in cinema history that drive-ins played in terms of what they played that you might not be able to find other places.
Wow. And then we have a final question here as we wrap up from Akanika, a very dedicated member of the channel. We appreciate the support. Did you have any filming mishaps with the drone? And how did you like working with drone filming?
I really like it. And in fact, I'm really happy with the images for this film. I only had one tiny thing when I was shooting at the Mission Tiki, and I backed off of their marquee and I hit a little branch of a tree and it fell to the ground, but it wasn't high because I was just getting a pulled back shot of the marquee, like, and as soon as I did that, I was just like, oh, I got to be more careful. I had a couple times where you're kind of flying and then you spin around and you realize, oh shit, there's a wire right behind me. Good thing I didn't back up anymore. When you get up kind of high and there's poles or whatever. But yes, thankfully I just got used to the device enough that I knew how to look around me and sort of assess things before I did the shot. It's just like any shoot, you have to set up your shot first and get the angle, get what you're going to do. And so luckily I did not have any major. I have not had to replace my drone or replace any propellers on my drone. I know a lot of people have to do that. So far, knock on wood, I haven't had to do that. I'm a good, safe drone pilot.
Cool. Well, April, thank you again for joining the Film Threat livecast here. The movie Back to the Drive-In is available next week. Get it on demand, rent it, buy it, see it, and then get your ass to a drive-in. That's all I'm going to say to everybody out there watching. April, thank you so much. And I got a good feeling about this movie for Award This. I got a feeling. So I think we're announcing nominees in a month or so. Yeah, we're still,
In April, yeah.
all we have is the date of when we're doing it, which is June 10th.
Awesome.
We gotta wait. And
Well,
hope to see
it
you
was
there.
the best awards show. The last time when I went, I loved everything about it. It was so fun. You
Oh,
guys know how to throw an awards show.
it's just, you know what? We just focus on the most important part of the award show, the drinking and the partying. That's the most important. No, that's not true. Thank you, April. Great. Congrats again. I will see you. I'll see you soon. And congrats on, because I know you're working on something else. You're never not working on another movie.
I am working on a bunch of stuff, but we'll get to that later.
Cool. All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
All
Thanks,
right.
April.
Bye now.